possible. So let's say they came across like, hey, I need your help in understanding with the data that we have, which is essentially, this is a problem. Our company is losing customers. Can you help us? So the approach in general that management consultants take, that they come up with a bunch of frameworks, builds hypotheses around it. Okay, this probably the reasons for attritions are that, what could be the reasons, and then they build a bunch of hypotheses. Then the next point would be get all the data that possibly can serve or like prove or disprove those hypotheses. So essentially like, okay, the customers is losing, they are not traveling because what kind of customers are there? Probably there are business customers are traveling for, let's say, business versus customers are traveling for pleasure. Maybe the business customers do not have enough comfort. That's why they are not losing. They are not getting sufficient, let's say, leg space. Maybe the flights, which are long haul, which are for a longer time, are not so comfortable. Maybe the short haul flights are probably more like, and people are enthused to do go on those flights. There can be information about, okay, customers probably between so and so places, probably customers are losing more. So proving and disproving these with data is something that they do next. Once that are established, then we go they go to the insights, which is more around like, okay, now we know that, okay, customers are traveling. So there are business customers and there are leisure customers. What kind of deals they are achieving, what kind of flights they are looking at. Just give me 1 second. I see that there is something popping up over here. Okay. I don't know if you guys could see it, but I just wanted to make sure. Okay. So there are like different types of customers, what kind of flights they are taking, what is causing those discomfort, if there is any specific event or if there is anything specific that is causing that event versus, over a period of time, if there is something that is happening, if there is any repercussion on the social media about the experience that they're saying, if there is anything that we can see from the way they are booking their flights, if there is so there are different types of ways that the customer experience can be achieved. There also can be ways from if there are lots of complaints that the customer care is getting. So looking at all these data points and then analyzing them, come up with insights, and then recommending that, okay, hey, airlines, you are losing these customers because of these reasons. So, and then those insights could be something like the flights that you are choosing for, let's say, for business customers, are these flights where they are they do not have premium kind of treatment over there. So when there are premium business customers, they are not getting when they're going to check in, that you do not have premium line for them, so they do not want to wait, so they are moving to other customers. It can be as simple as that. So then, depending upon that, they suggest that, okay, run these types of campaigns, and those campaigns can be different for different customers, different for different purposes, and all of that. So that's what we did, run different suggestions or recommendation to the customers. And then let's say reduce layover time for connecting flights, or while doing this, make the booking simpler. So this is kind of the approach. What I realized while doing this, I love this part, by the way, just to make sure, absolutely love this thing about management consulting, that it gives you the framework. It makes you look into all the areas where the customer impacts are. It broadens your horizon as to how the market is, how the customer is, how the industry is, how the competition is, all of that, which was great. What kind of intrigued me more to move to product management was that after we give the recommendation, what happens then? How does that impact the customer? What is that happen after that? How did they experience it? I think that's where I felt that product management came into picture, because once I recommended that, once the changes are done, how did that product lifecycle kind of came into picture? So if I have to tell product management, it's more like, okay, you have customer, you have technology, and then business, and then in between. So it takes from the time of understanding what the customer problems are, how you should solve it, if there is any existing one that is solving it. If no, then how you solve it. and then the process of solving it with respect to product development, and then supporting it by all the supporting areas like product marketing, product operations, and sales and legal and all of that stuff. So that's how I landed into product management. Hope that makes sense. I don't know so far if you have any questions. Otherwise, I can move with the example. Do you I just want to check, pause for a moment and check if there is any question.
Yeah. Guys, if you have any questions, just unmute yourself and ask.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hello.
Ma'am, I want to ask, what are the skills required to become a product manager?
Sure. I think I would definitely talk about skills later. To be honest, even though I know that I have come from electrical engineering and then done MBA and then data and all of that, I strongly believe, because I have seen my colleagues come from it, many of them does not come from technology. So I feel that the only skill that you probably need to build is understanding the customer, which probably more come from a lot of asking question about why they are facing the problem. So it's more like, okay, why do I need to solve this? What is the problem that they are facing? How can I solve it? And coming up with okay, how my industry is working and all of that. So I feel that the major, probably if there is a major skill, is probably understanding. So empathy and then communication. I feel like discussing, understanding, I think that's probably first. But in order for you to achieve, the supporting ones are probably the frameworks, understanding of data. I think those are probably the more on the hard skills, understanding of data. So analytical skills, creative thinking, and all of that comes into picture. But if there is any degree or okay, I have to be an engineer to do this, or I have to go through so and so process, I don't believe that makes sense. Because today, when I see many of my colleagues, they have done so far more than skill building, I think focusing more on why of the problem, then understanding the data, and then the communication. I think these three are probably the topmost ones. Does that answer?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. You're welcome.
Good evening, ma'am. I have a question that
Sure.
Can you share some of the most valuable lessons or challenges you have faced in your tenure and your role as the director of product management?
Okay, sure. No, in fact, I do have some of the ones that I have put later. But let me probably put in terms of challenge. So one of the things that, and I'm so glad that you asked this question, because the challenges come from different angles. Okay, I think probably the first, when I see that coming from let's say an organization, when I'm working here. I'll talk about challenges in both places, in different countries as well as in here. So I feel that while working for a product manager, we do have a set notion of this is the way we need to do things. Many times what happens is that, okay, this is the problem and this is the solution, and this is how we need to get it done. Sometimes, and that's probably at a leadership level. It's not something that it's just ingrained in the character, that, okay, this is the solution, that it works. I think some of the challenges that has been, even today, when you see that breaking that norm and asking the question as to why this solution needs to be done, and communicating that, sometimes it's very conflicting. So let's imagine, let's say my product executive or my product leader thinks of something that needs to be done in a certain way, just because they do not want to ruin the relationship with, let's say, an external partner. Let's say they do not want a relationship with a cross-functional engineer or so and so. But when we go more into that, customer is facing the problem in certain way, and that's why it cannot be done so and so manner. I think that comes across a very challenge. I have faced that a lot. So I guess what helps in that case is probably supporting it with data. So it's more hey, this is the problem that you were saying. I know this has been solved over the last 5 years by so and so manner, and they are our trusted customer, trusted partner. But data shows that this is not working anymore because of the evolved use space, because of the evolved technology, because the customer need has changed, because now customer has a competitor they are willing to go, and this does not serve the purpose anymore. I think providing them with data and then, giving those insights to them, and then discussing. And I think that communication comes into picture, and then providing them those insights that this is why it does not work, I think makes a lot of sense. Other type of challenges, I guess, comes more from the point of view of like, I think diversity, and the diversity is more all from the point of view of like, specifically in US, I would say, specifically, let's say, even from the point of view of being an Asian American or being a women leader. I think there are challenges there too, and it is well known. I'm so thankful to work in an organization like Group M, where these things are acknowledged, and then you are being given a seat on the table to put your perspective. But there are challenges into that as well, because then your perspectives are lost, and even though you have a voice, you are not being able to put it out there. So I think that those boundaries and those things are also there, but you need to navigate and make allies at right places to make sure you overcome those. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. Okay, so let's go into this, and we'll take more questions again. So I kind of wanted to put this out here with how product management has evolved over a period of time. So whenever there are like products that come in, like when say somebody starts to build a new product. So this is kind of the first view of when Google started their product. So I have just taken the example of Google as a search, Google search only, not any other products of Google, but Google search. So when Google started their search, their objective was to provide customers with whatever information that they have in a simple manner and across the globe. So somebody who's in US has the same access to the same information to somebody who's in a remote village in, let's say, in Siberia. So it's access same information across the world. And for them, what primary thing that they needed to do was organizing those information in a manner. So they organized that information in a manner, and now giving the access to the customers to search in the way that they would like to. And that's how they came up with this. And now today, when we see Google, how it has evolved, that you have Google search with text-based and all of that, but you also have, with the evolving technology, with the evolving time, with the evolving need of the customers, you can search text-based, but you can search also with your voice. You can search also with your, with your camera or pictures. You can also search with questions, not only exactly typing those questions or so, but it is now more context-based. So even if you are typing a questions, it can still predict maybe so and so you are looking for. So it has evolved so much over a time. And then based on the searches that we have done, now look at the number of products that Google has come up with. So search with images, search with video, search with news, all of those are now separate products. So this evolution has taken place over a period of time, depending upon the evolving customer needs. Although one thing I do want to point out, just because it is this page, you do see that this first page of Google search is still the first, blank. There is so much real estate on that page, but it is still blank. There is a very reason that that page has been kept as blank like that, because it's simple. So simplicity is still the key while working for the product management, because people love simple things. They are always it is when it is easier for them to kind of do something, they would always like to do that. They would always be attracted to do that. Easier workflow, easier skins, easier buttons, navigation, and all of that. So I wanted to make sure that, that's something that is there. Let's move on to the next one. I guess you probably, if somebody who has kind of got into product management or reading a little bit more or less know that, okay, these are these 4 basic stages. So you are starting with product development. At that point in time, that product has not developed, but that time we are thinking, the product folks or the strategists are thinking about how the product would help. What's the market like? What's the competition like? Is there a threat that if I go with this product, there people would there would be a competition and my folks would be lost. And how much should I invest? What are the problems that I'm trying to solve? All of that. So there is a lot of investment and understanding market, about the problem that is going on. Once the product is introduced, that's when a lot of training, I would say, or probably a lot of marketing goes on to build awareness of the product. Hey, there is a new product in the market. You can do this so and so with this. So that's when the product kind of, goes into the introduction. Once it is introduced, when people understand the value of it, that's when it's kind of into growth phase. And then once it grows, people understood the value, that's when it is into the maturity. And then slowly, more or less, it's decline. Just to put it into perspective, Facebook in India right now in maturity. So I wanted to point that out, that based on the market, based on the population, based on the technological strength, based on understanding of education and all of that industry, a product may be at different stage in different continents, countries, or even in the same country at different spaces or across different demographics. It can be very different. So, but in Facebook in US right now in decline because youngsters are not joining them. So it's very much like that. So, but let's say product, like if you say introduction, something which is in growth phase, let's say ChatGPT, or even let's say in ChatGPT across the world, AI developed products or other kind of AI enabled products or so, that's very much in growth phase. Electric vehicle, that's very much in growth phase. So they have introduced, and they are like, of course, they are not software products, but they're C products. More or less every product, be it software or hardware, kind of follow this process. But these processes needs to be probably modified, needs to be here and there a little bit, depending upon like which products it is, how it is evolved, what's the target audience and all of that. This may be a good point to kind of point out that both B2B and B2C also follow this structure, depending upon how this could be, or what could be the, what are the, target audience, what the business, what's the problem. It may be modified here and there. How long somebody stays, which product stays in some zone or some phase, that depends upon the product and the audience and the market and all of that. But more or less, this remains same. Okay, these are some of the experience. I do have few slides on the B2B and B2C at the later, but let me probably get to this. But before I move on to this, is there any question that you had on product management specifically?
Ma'am, I would like to ask a question. That generally the industry's notion is that to be a product manager, people expect that you have to be a graduate in technology itself. And the graduates in other fields, for example, commerce or any other field, arts field, are not well equipped for the industry. So how is it the situation right now?
I think it's the way I kind of mentioned. I understand probably where this is coming from. Because most of the cases where it happens is we are going into software product management, and where people probably value the part that, okay, if one of the more major stakeholders that you have are engineers, because you drive the engineers to work towards you. So that's kind of where it brings in that, okay, if you know probably about technology, you would be drive them better. And I do not deny that having a grasp myself in technology, I have better control in this. But I also do believe that right now, see, I do not code, or I do not review their code, or I do not really, it probably it's just an anchor. So I would say if it is there is a technology degree, it probably helps you have a better conversation. So it's like, hey, this is the cloud where we are putting this data from, and this is where I would be having. So it probably puts you into perspective because you know or understand that background. But to be very fair to my colleagues, I don't think it puts into any disadvantage over I do not understand. I think that can be learned. So I think for someone who probably is not coming from a technology background, I think what probably would be helpful is understanding and getting better concept about technology a little bit, because you don't necessarily have to do the technology yourself, but you need even if you are working in a software product, you probably anyways need to understand the landscape. So I think for developing the landscape, for having that, having that conversation going probably with a recruiting manager or your hiring manager, if you can develop that much context, I feel that's enough. And it would definitely be sufficient while you are working, because you will learn on the job, and I'm sure you would learn in the process. You would anyways reach out. I do that too. It just because I'm an engineer doesn't mean that I do not do my learning every day. I do that too still, but I am sure you will do that as well. But I guess to get that initial hiccup or initial thing, just understand the landscape. What are the ones that are valued? What are the key technologies in the place or in play? And I think you should be fine.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. I'll move on here then. So I know somebody asked about the challenges. So I wanted to kind of give this thing, like, since I have worked in this multinational, multicultural product environment. So right now, WPP, in choreographer group M, the product that I'm working in, WPP is a company built in UK, kind of gets most of its revenue from US market. Almost 60% of its revenue comes from US market. And the products is all over the world. And so it's very multinational. It's the folks that are working are very global. So I'm very fortunate in that manner. But it comes also with that some of the things that learning I have over a period of time is something that I wanted to share, which is probably very interesting. So coming back to the challenges question. So I don't know if it still happens, but I remember if you have worked in certain, it happens in US also, it happens in Malaysia also. So there is nothing that I'm saying, but I'm just taking an example from my real life. So let's say when I was working in Hyderabad or Bangalore, and even when I have worked in Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Kolkata in India. So I'm guilty myself of this. But let's say in Kolkata when I'm working, there are 10 colleagues I have, and out of them, let's say 7 are Bengali. So I would by habit, I would just start talking in Bengali, even in a corporate meeting. So the thing is and then I know I meant no harm. But the problem with that is that the folks who are there, they feel excluded. What happens is after trying 4 times, then they do not say to you, but they also do not feel connected to you in that process. So when I'm probably just a team member, it's fine. But when you are leading a team, when you are coming to go to a team where probably after this degree, you will probably go to a place where you will be looking for managing a team. It's extremely important for a manager to make sure to build that culture in yourself of inclusivity, of making sure that when I'm doing this, I am building this culture, I am leading this with my behavior so that none of my teammates do this. And I think it is okay to kind of build those things as this needs to be done. I have done this myself. And when I became a manager, when I went to Bangalore or Hyderabad, when I experienced this, that's when I realized this is not right. And when I need to inculcate that behavior in my team so that it becomes better. That is so true for other countries. I have faced that in Malaysia and otherwise also, but that's something when I came to a global companies, I think these are the culture that you face and you do not do that. Similar thing probably with respecting differences and cultural contextual. Probably a funny story about cultural contextualization. So the thing is, let's say, I don't know if you have here, if you have had your clients from US or somebody when you were working, but there is this thing of, let's say when you are talking, in the beginning, they would talk about hey, how's the weather there? Is it raining? Yeah, it's raining for the whole day. And I would not understand in the beginning, why are they talking about weather? So why is these things? Then as it went on, or they would start, or as probably Indians, when we are in a meeting, we'd start how was the match yesterday, the cricket match? Did you see Raina scored this? Did you see Dhoni scored this? Or things like that. So these are things which probably comes from the background, okay, we are here. But when, let's say you are on a group of people, or you are in a place where probably most of the folks come from so and so background of cultural, here, let's say baseball is a thing, or football is a thing, which is not soccer, but thing, and they are talking about that. I think it is absolutely important to understand that, okay, this is the place that they are coming from. And either you try to, probably if you are trying to build a long-term relationship with them, maybe you just understand and learn a little bit here and there, or probably participate in this conversation in a fun manner. Because I think when you are trying to influence people, make relationship, these small things matters a lot. I think I have learned over the period of time that in building those relationships, common understanding matters a lot. So this is extremely important for someone to know where they are coming from, what are they talking about, and all of that. I hope that makes sense. Respect differences probably is in the same manner. We as an Indian, I think we are very, very tolerant in terms of respecting differences in terms of religious terms or language or what kind of cuisines and all of that thing. We are very respectful. But I think when we are coming, since more or less we come from the same socio-cultural background, when we go somewhere else, we are still to learn about, like, what kind of differences that it brings in and how we kind of navigate through those. So I guess, yeah, I kind of wanted to put that into perspective. These things need to, like, these are extremely important as you grow into the leadership management, like post MBA. I think these are something that consciously needs to be brought in, and inculcate those in your teams, in your behaviors and all. I have done that, like, I would not say from the very first day, but this is something that probably kept in mind. I hope that makes sense. This is another one, probably working as a women leader. So, and this is for all the girls and the women in this thing now. This is for all of you. I feel like I'm an advocate for being, like, as a women leader. There are things that probably, like, there are many folks I know that who completely believe that or acknowledge that being a women leader is sometimes, like, working against the biases. But I'm not saying, of course, that there are not male allies. So I think being assertive is extremely important. Making sure that you have allies with the men or women in the right places while you are working. And then there is this thing that generally said with data, that women bring the emotional quotient more into the picture. So help bring that into the organization, help bring authenticity, come across as you are, rather than hiding, your personal things. I don't know how much time we have, but more or less that was it. I did have few more slides before I kind of go into. So all that now said, I think I want to come back to your question specifically around, like, what skill set do I need? This is a report from World Economic Forum for, like, what are the core skills of workers today for any jobs. If you see that the jobs that they're saying, for the first two was like analytical thinking, creative thinking, which is more what is you can inculcate by, let's say, learning with the frameworks, with the books that you are probably learning, the classes, and also that is providing with the frameworks, with different kinds of, like, design thinking that you are learning in the textbooks, from the marketing, from strategy, from all of that. That's probably forming your opinion around it. But if you see 3, 4, 5 more of them, like the one, they are all very much soft skills. So that's not something that somebody can build, or there is not something that somebody can learn. It's probably something that you have to build over a period of time. So, like, resilience, motivation, curiosity, and even some of them, like dependability, attention to detail, empathy, leadership, and all of that. See, some of them, like technological literacy, come in like 6. There is one point in there, like, so one of them is rated, but most of the skills which are actually needed are soft skills, which are very hard to kind of do, but it is what, like, probably makes you different from others. Even though you see there is lots of thing around AI and big data and all, they come still very, like, down in the line. So if there are skills that probably needs cultivation, is definitely communication and adaptability to change. Just funny story around this is that, imagine the number 3 point, why it is so important. Imagine, like, for me, for a long period of time, I would not, like, when I would call my parents, I would not call my mother on WhatsApp. The reason being, if I have to call her, I have to tell her all the time, unmute here is the button, here is this, this is how you mute. So the reason is that she was not being able to adapt to the technology that has been given to her, and it's very difficult to communicate. So I would just talk to my father and then say, okay, give it to my mom or something, even though she had a phone or so. So I guess just imagine the same thing when it happens for you at the workplace. If you are adaptable to change, if you are accepting, learning things properly, just accepting the change properly, you are probably the first person who people would reach out to. Just like I reached out to my father, then my mother. Now when I got a chance, I have kind of made sure that, okay, now she knows everything so that she's adaptable too. But that's something that to keep in mind. If it happens with you, I'm sure it happens with others when they're reaching out to you. So if there is absolutely one thing that you should take away from this presentation, is that while you are building your career, while you are doing all of these, make sure that you tell a story. No matter how great a job you are doing, Nobody knows how great you are doing unless you communicate it to them, saying that this is how I added value. This is how I did my job. So coming with a compelling story for your career, for the job that you're doing, it's extremely important. And I cannot stress anymore upon this. I take that as myself, and I'm hoping that I was able to tell a story, but I think that's something that is extremely important. You would be able to tell a story that people like only when you listen to them. Otherwise, you probably tell a story something that they are not interested. So it is extremely important that you listen to them before telling the story or while telling the story. And another thing that is extremely important is having clarity. This is very difficult to do, but I think people value those people while they're telling the story, while they're listening, they are building the thoughts clearly in their mind. So that these three things, if there is no slide that you want to remember, if there is absolutely one slide that you want to remember this, that tell your career as a story, tell your job, probably craft your career like a product, these are my milestones, this is how I want to do, tell it as a story. While you tell the story, listen how they want to listen to it, have that clarity in the thought. So that's all. I did have some more, but I don't know if I have time. To be honest, I would just stop here. If there is any question, I'll probably just take that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And guys, if you have any questions, just shoot.
Ma'am, could I ask one question?
Yeah, of course.
Ma'am, what are the typical steps involved in the review and approval process of a PRD before a product development project commences?
Okay, that's a great question. I guess that's probably more interesting. I'm guessing that you probably have been into this, because you are talking about PRD and all of that. So when the product development process happens, first the need comes from that, okay, customer is in need of something, or they are not probably talking, but you see that there is a problem happening. So you come up with that, okay, this is my problem. So you kind of come up with the thing, this is the problem that customer is facing, and the reason they are facing so and so, why they are facing this problem. So you come up with a bunch of solutions. So maybe let's say you are coming up with option 1, option 2, and option 3. These are the possible solutions that you have. Based on the solutions that you have, which one probably would create the most impact, you then try to understand. And the impact could be in terms of monetary impact, like this is how I'm reducing this much cost. Because customer is facing a problem, you are definitely losing some money, some effort, something somewhere, right? So that means, let's say that could be in terms of money, that could be in terms of time. So then you translate that into money. That could be in terms of efficiency, that could be in terms of storage somewhere, processing and all of that. Anyways, you need to translate that into monetary value to kind of come into some format. Once you have done that, then you find out, okay, in order for me to build this PRD 1, 2, 3, these options, these are my costs associated with it. So then you prioritize as to okay, these are my costs, these are my impact. Then I think one of the main job that product manager has is prioritization. So okay, this is how I'll prioritize in order for me to do that. Okay, this work needs to be done first. This is and then all of these things mostly encapsulated in PRD. But to be honest, in the age of Agile, there is very less PRDs these days. So you generally put these things into Jira stories or stuff, and put probably epics, AHA. There are many tools these days where you kind of put your roadmaps, you put your stories into it. So you do not write big PRDs these days just because you want to kind of go through this Agile in smaller time, faster improvement and all of that. But if you have to review that, then it goes through an approval process to make sure all your stakeholders are aligned. And the stakeholders could be engineer, data scientists, your sales, your marketing, maybe if you have a product operations team, if they are involved in operations, and then the go-to-market team that, okay, this is how I'll do. And that's how it then gets into in your backlog, engineer picks it up and then go through the process. Does that make sense or answer your question?
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Okay, I guess are there any more questions or anything more?
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Ma'am, how does a product manager collaborate with cross-functional teams such as marketing, sales, and engineering?
Yeah. So that's a great question, and that's probably like everyday job of like product manager. So let's say like more than so imagine you have to let's take an example probably. Let's take an example of a product which needs, I think one of the example could be this thing, the WhatsApp updates. I think you guys all use WhatsApp. So let's say WhatsApp, because you mentioned marketing, so that's why I thought like probably WhatsApp would be because I just saw an announcement. So let's say when you are trying to introduce a feature, like something that you felt, that something that the leadership felt or the customer felt or some way you felt like, okay, we need something in this. So one of the features is like you want to be able to build a community rather than only having communities in Facebook and others, but you want to build a community in WhatsApp too. So now that feature, let's say they tried to introduce that feature. Now, how do you do that? First thing is that, okay, you understand and try and understand how this needs to be built, whatever the things are. First, you of course evaluate. I'm kind of not talking about the part where you vetted and found out that community needs to be absolutely built, because that's the solution. We do not want people to go on to Zoom or Teams or like Telegram and others, because we want people to communicate through WhatsApp. So we want them to stay on with broader number of people, to stay on WhatsApp, build the communities here rather than going on to Telegram and other competitive software. So that's vetted, that's done. Now coming to the piece where you are trying to build it. So when you are trying to build it, who are your primary cross-shoulder functions? They are the engineers, they are the data scientists, they are the product operations teams who would be implementing, they are your release team, they are the one. So that's when, as a product manager, you probably would create the roadmap that this would take, let's say, you will work with them and you will understand that, okay, this will, let's say, take for the whole things to finish, let's say 6 months of all of this community building. You will put that into 6 months. We will work with your engineer to fix which should be done before, which should be done after, and you will come up with a roadmap of that. So, okay, first we'll introduce this, second we'll introduce this, and then at the end we'll get to this. Remember, I'm talking about an example where there is already a product exist in the market. If that's not there, then it's a different story altogether, because that's a new, here I'm trying to introduce a feature, not a product in general, a feature in the product. So then you will go through that process. That's when you will connect more with them. Once you are more or less done, now you have to introduce, first of all, to release and operations and all. But now your terms begins that, okay, now you also have to start talking more to the marketing and the operation team, who would essentially, when you are done, they would say that, hey, customers, this thing is there now, go and use it. So you need to still start talking to them from the beginning that, hey, we are rolling this out. But I guess now your interaction with them become more, because how this should be put to the customer, how should we tell them how they know, where should we tell them that, okay, how to access it. So they came up with this little thing on the WhatsApp on the thing, like where they are kind of talking about the product announcement. That is very intentional, because people were not being able to recover what new features are coming. So they came up with this new little feature where now you can learn about all their product announcement and all of that. So that's part of marketing, where probably technology helped to get them into there. So that's when they kind of talked about, okay, this is, you should be able to use it. These are the ways that can be used. For B2B products, this happens a lot in terms of training. For B2C, this comes more of like, these kind of announcement. For B2B, you will see more like in terms of training, like how you should use this. So there will be a training document, and there will be links as to learn how to do this and all this sort of thing that comes along with training people or sales people or marketing people together. Does that make sense? Or does that help?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Sure.
Okay, anyone have any questions? Okay, we will take one more question. So if you have any questions, then just shoot.
So I would like to
One by one, please. Snail, you first, and after that,
Yeah.
Roshan.
so ma'am, I would like to ask, like, post-COVID, we have seen many changes, not
Yeah.
only in the part where producers, but also in the basis of customers. So how have these changes affected B2B market in terms of product management? Can you shed some light on this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, to be honest. I think product management has evolved as part of after this COVID. I think in general, like in terms of B2B product management, or so, I guess the main part probably that has changed, like the style of collaboration, I would say. Like if I have to like product management as a function, how the B2B customers have changed, probably it's a different ball game altogether. But I think B2B product management, I think the ways now, the way that collaboration happens evolved a lot. So let's see if I am to do the product management, like, if I have to do a strategy sessions, probably before what I would do is like, I would go to office and like, create like I will invite my engineering lead, I'll invite my operations lead, I'll invite my marketing lead, and I'll invite everybody that I need to cross-function data science lead. And then do the whiteboarding to come up with, hey, these are the strategies that we take. This is way we'd progress. This is what we'll do first. This is what we'll do that. I think now we use a lot of help of technology, because let's say be it Zoom or be it AHA, be it like Trello, all of these folks have now started providing with a lot of collaboration network, a lot of collaboration tools that you see, even if it's Zoom. So we take a lot of help of that in order for us to navigate through this thing. So I guess that has been very helpful in terms of like the collaboration across different places and like across the cross-holder team. The customers, I think, changed differently too. I think post-COVID has an impact on the B2B customer in general. I think they have been more collaborative, and they have been very, what should I say, like adaptive to change. I think COVID changed them for better. Because I guess for a long period of time, if you see that, we were always kind of focusing on like, this needs to be done, this needs to be delivered, or so and so, or this is absolutely needed for customers to stay in that sort, or for this or this. These things have moved for better, I would say. I think people have become more prone to change. For the last 3 to 4 years, the train has been so different from the predicted one. I think customer has become more kind of, what should I say, like flexible towards change. So I think that way I feel like more communication channel has opened, and like there is more room for discussion as to, hey, this product serves better versus this way this serves better. This is like, we'll do it phased wise, so and so manner versus we'll do this all together. So I think that adaptability has changed. Did that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Roshan, you may ask now.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening.
Ma'am, how can we strategically modify the product specification in response to its initial lack of success in the market?
Oh, that's a very tricky question. But I think so. I will give you an example. That's a very good question. But I'll give you some example. Have you heard this thing of Slack? Have you ever used Slack? There is a collaboration tool called Slack. Yes. Okay, so let me give the example of that. So Slack as a tool. So Slack was actually a company. Slack was not the name. They were a company who actually tried to create games. So they were in the business of games. So they were trying to build games, and which the games creates like it plays with multiple people. So in order for them to create the build, in order for while they are playing, while they were testing, they created also a kind of a tool where they would chat and say like, hey, I created this, this kind of thing. Now you go and do this. So for them to communicate internally while they are playing the game, they created a collaboration tool where they can communicate about while they are playing the game. So this is kind of the testing process. And then they introduced the product. So their product was a gaming tool. They thought that people would be very interested. But the product was a huge failure. The product didn't work at all. But what happened later, what they did, in the game failed, but that they realized in the process, they have made that collaboration tool that they used while communicating in the thing, a really nice one. So what they did, they in fact rebranded themselves and introduced that communication tool into the market. And that became a huge hit, which is Slack today. So the thing is, there are many things there are many reasons why the things may not work, which is probably there is a better competition that is there, where people are going, or probably it is not solving a problem, or the problem probably doesn't even exist, or let's say the customers that you are targeting probably not anymore interested in this stuff. First is to understand what is lacking. If you can fix it, go fix it. But if you cannot, I think it's a huge point if you can rebuild the purpose and repurpose it for some reason, which is what Slack did, and they're hugely successful. So it depends upon how you view it, I guess. But I feel like, that thinking to pivot is something that probably helps a lot as an organization. It's not probably personally, but also as an organization as well. Did that make any sense?
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. We will just take one more question.
Hi, ma'am.
Yes,
Hello.
Manya, go ahead.
Hi. So I would want to ask that what key performance indicators or metrics do you use to track the measure or success of your products?
Okay. So we do have key performance indicators. Like, so what we have generally in most of the organization, what we have so far is like, there is an organizational objective that you need to finish, that may be top line or bottom line. From there, the leadership would come up with, say, some kind of OKRs, like objective key results. Okay, these are the ones that we need to perform. So each product line from the OKRs, now as product leaders, we have to come up with, in order for us to meet those OKRs, what are the KPIs that we would like to meet? So we would build our own KPIs based on that. So like, just keeping in mind OKRs. So let's say one of my KPIs is like how many people or how many agencies, how many folks are using it, new adopters that are using my products recently. So like, let's say I have introduced my product to one of the agencies. As I said, like my agencies are the ones who use my product. Agencies use it for the brand. So like, let's say a brand like Unilever, for a brand like Unilever. So one of the agencies may use my product to give them that. So one of the OKRs is that, okay, one of the agencies is using, how many brands they have like, used it for, how many new agencies that I can introduce to who would be using that for. So that's one of the APRs. How much revenue, incremental revenue that I have brought as part of that. So it depends upon what kind of OKRs that are set as part of the organization, and then what KPIs that I build, which can be very different for B2B and B2C for in general. Mine is a B2B product. So like, those are kind of the ones which is respect to how much efficiency have I brought? What is the cost value? If I have moved something to cloud, what is the cost that I have reduced? So those are some of the KPIs that I have built, let's say, based on the OKRs. But it may vary very differently from product to product.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manya. And I think we are done with questions. So yes, I'd like to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks to our esteemed guest speaker. It has been an honor and a privilege to have Anindita with us. You have not only shared valuable insights and knowledge, but have also inspired us with your words. Your expertise in the field of product management is truly enlightening. We appreciate the fact of you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today and share your wisdom. Lastly, a big thank to the audience for your active participation and attention during the speech. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
I also want to thank everyone for all the questions. Thanks to the committee for reaching out to me, for giving me the opportunity to share my experience. I hope that I could do justice to the request that you made, and it was helpful to you. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and thanks everyone who attended and asked questions and listened to me, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.